Administrators Conference at the Federal Reserve Bank earlier this summer, and one of the presenters was the Director of Cash Operations at the Dallas Fed. He was talking about the new currency that's going to be released in 2013. Okay, and I asked him, will RFID chips be part of the technology, the security technology in the new currency? He didn't exactly answer. What he said was that there are security measures that are going to be in the new currency that I'm not even privy to. He said, but the latest, most up-to-date technological security measures will be in the new currency.
So the new currency is going to have a chip?
Yes.
Wow.
So it'll be in cash, too.
Wow. That's wild. I didn't know that one. Thanks.
Did you know that most of the clothing that's made in China already has an RFID chip in it?
Yes, actually, I was going to show you that. Macy's is now announcing that they're going to put the RFID chip in the shoes. This technology has proven effective for our testing, and we believe now is the right time to roll it out. I have some videos here that will play a couple of them because most of you seem to already know about it, just to give those who don't know some of the things that they could do with the chip and what they're thinking of doing.
More now of our special coverage here tonight, life in the U.S. in 10 years' time. By that time, there may be all kinds of new ways to safeguard and identify all those things that make each of us unique, our faces, even our fingerprints, even our eyes. Here now with more on the future of technology, NBC's Tom Costello.
The year is 2017. You're rushed to a hospital unconscious with no ID or medical history, but thanks to a microchip under your skin, it's all there. Science fiction 20 years ago, but a biometric reality today.
The technology is based on answering one simple question. Am I who I say I am?
Already, fingerprints and iris scans verify passenger identities at airports. Within 10 years, that technology may be even more widespread. And look for more complex facial recognition programs that scan a crowd of thousands looking for a single terrorist. Today's facial recognition software starts with the eyes. Then it maps out the contours of the face and compares that against a database of millions, a database that's growing by the day. What's next? At the University of Bath in England, researchers predict big changes for consumers.
I think it is possible to free us completely of our wallets and keys using biometric technology, if that's what people want in 10 years' time.
In fact, it's already here. The latest home security locks use fingerprints to control deadbolts. And at the Jewel Osco grocery store in Chicago, some customers pay using their fingerprints. No paper or plastic.
You don't really need anything other than your hand, and you already got that with you.
So will future department stores scan our irises, like in the movie Minority Report, then offer products catered to who we are?
Hello, Mr. Yakamoto. Welcome back to the Gap.
Experts say that technology is here now. The challenge is to safeguard our privacy in a brave new world. Tom Costello, NBC News, Alexandria, Virginia.
Hey, see how they spun it into a good thing, right? These are the good sides of the chip. I mean, it does have some benefits. I don't know if she'll play this one. No, we'll skip it.
The whole agenda is to create a one-world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is giving me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. If they say you owe us this much money in taxes, they just deduct it out of your chip digitally.
Total control.
Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, they can just turn off your chip. And you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people.
And that chip's connected to a database that has your purchasing records, what you do, what
everything.
You sell.
Everything is in there, you know? And so they want a one-world government controlled by them, everybody being chipped, all your money in those chips, and they control the chips, and they control people. And you become a slave. You become a serf to these people. That's their goal. That's their intention.
Will that have anything to do with the illegal aliens?
I don't know. That's a good question.
No big deal.
Yeah, really. They would have to have one. No, I'm like that. Okay, this is Pastor Perry Stone talking about the mark of the beast and his idea of what the chip is.
Revelation chapter 13, 16 through 7. He causeth all, both small, great, rich, poor, free, and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, that no man might buy or sell, save he have the mark, the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Now look here. There are three things linked to this system. What this is an economic system that develops when the Antichrist gets in full swing. And you have to have a name or a number. Now, how many of you know you're already known by your number? You're known by your number already. But this gets more specific because it tells you that the mark is put in the hand. Now, before we share this, let me just give you this information again. Revelation 13 says there is a mark in the right hand or in the forehead. Now, this is bizarre. These are actual X-ray pictures. There is an RFID chip implant that over 2 million people now have. And it is implanted in one or two places. Most people have it implanted right between the thumb and the pointing finger in this area here. But you can also see where it's implanted here. It's the size of a piece of rice. Information, all this information about your history, your medical history, your Social Security card, all of that can be put very quickly on this chip. A friend of mine flew on a plane with a man who is a doctor who is on the United States Medical Board. There's a board for the whole United States, the Medical Association. The doctor is talking to the preacher, not knowing he's a preacher, and he says, I'm going to Orlando to meet with 3,000 doctors about the new chip. He said, what new chip? And he said, well, and he explained this right here. And he said, he talked about there's a lithium battery. He said, but we've already tested it in people, and some blood types would reject it. Wonderful. It's funny. Some blood types would reject it. He said, but we think we've got it perfected now. He said, well, what's it for? They said, right under the hair lining of the forehead or in the right hand. And they talked about the body heat has to maintain a certain level for the battery to work. However, listen, if this breaks, the lithium battery creates, and here's a quote, a grievous sore. Now, if you know anything about the book of Revelation, it says those who have the mark, one of the judgments at the end of the tribulation is a grievous sore breaks out on those who have the mark of the beast. The government, the administration right now, now by the way, Obama didn't work on this. This has been worked on for years. But the administration wants this chip completed at the end of this year. And by 2012, every American, this is the doctor speaking, every American native born must have this implant for security reasons. And it will have all your medical information, all your Social Security information. Now, I'm going to flat tell you something. Because this is too much like I read in the Bible. I ain't putting no chip in my head and in my hand.
Ditto on that one. And I think the point that I'm trying to make about the chip is if they tell you you've got to put the chip in your hand, remember we had this conversation, it could be the mark of the beast. It's just too many correlations. They say it's got to be in your hand or in your forehead. And the reason I heard it was in the forehead because you may not have a hand. So you got to put it in your head if you don't have hands. The other thing I was going to mention too is in the chip will be your bank account. So they will your bank account.
Oh.
They will automatically deduct taxes right from your account, right from your chip. So yes, exactly. And there is a provision in Obamacare for the chip, and for you can't get medical attention if you don't have the chip. I've heard that rumor too. I can't prove that one, but I have heard that also.
And doctors are asking in the questionnaires whether you have any guns in the house.
Oh yes, yes, I've seen that too. Yeah, yeah. Say no. Okay. What's that?
What was the comment? We can't hear it.
She was saying that doctors are asking you now if you have guns in the house. They're like taking a survey. Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on. We're skipping subjects now to hyperinflation. This is what I think is the most important of everything. Okay? So, I hope you all get this one. How many of you know about hyperinflation? That's about 20%. Okay, personally, I think we're headed this direction. And you will see why here in a few minutes. So I'm going to play my first video, and then I'll show you some more slides.
Our financial system has been flooded with trillions of dollars in newly printed money. Those with access to the Fed's cheap money have done well in the past year, with Wall Street paying out record bonuses. This has come at the expense of the rest of America becoming dependent on unemployment checks and food stamps. Government spending has gotten so far out of control that if Americans were taxed 100% of their income, it wouldn't be enough to balance the budget.
Nobody admits that this country's bankrupt, but they're still spending. The worse the problems get, the more they spend, and the bigger the debt gets. And this can't last, and I think the handwriting's on the wall.
When Medicare was created in 1966, it cost $3 billion per year, and the House Ways and Means Committee estimated that the cost would rise to $12 billion per year in 1990. The actual cost of Medicare in 1990 was $107 billion, 792% more than projected, and today it costs $408 billion annually. In 2003, at the beginning of the Iraq War, the White House estimated that the war would have a total cost of $50 to $60 billion. In reality, it has already cost $713 billion, over 1,000% more than projected. The Congressional Budget Office is estimating that the recently passed healthcare bill will cost $940 billion over the next 10 years. If history is any indication, the actual cost of the healthcare bill over the next decade will be many $1 trillion, making it the final nail in the coffin of the U.S. economy.
It is a bad bill all the way around, and it will hasten the day of the bankruptcy of this country, and the American people will have to face that. So it would be a terrible way to bring this to a head, but indeed it will. It will put us in such financial shape that this country will have to decide, do we want to live in a free country or do we want to live under totalitarianism?
Our economy has stayed afloat until now due to the U.S. dollar's status as the world's reserve currency and our ability to borrow an endless amount of money from China. For many years, the U.S. has been able to convince the Chinese to roll over their maturing U.S. treasuries plus interest into large amounts of new ones. However, China has now reduced their U.S. Treasury holdings 4 months in a row, and the U.S. government is antagonizing China by calling them currency manipulators. So, the U.S. had companies like RCA and Zenith that produced televisions.
The color is true, her hair so red, her eyes so blue.
The most trusted name in television.
But today, there are no television manufacturers left. In 1910, 70% of U.S. women's clothing and 40% of U.S. men's clothing was produced in New York. Today, the textile industry in New York is non-existent, and 34.5% of the clothing purchased in the U.S. is imported from China. Instead of investing to rebuild our manufacturing base, the U.S. government is now spending $1 trillion annually to maintain military bases in 140 countries around the world and fund perpetual wars in countries like Iraq.
War after war after war, and draining us $1 trillion a year to finance our empire and being in 140 countries and have 700 bases. That can't be sustained. That's what always brings empires down to their knees. It's the financial problems, and we're in a financial mess.
It should be clear to anyone.
Oil reached a high in July of 2008 of 147 million from developed nations. Congress helms in the private sector are contracting. Federal workers are receiving a 2% pay raise in 2010 after receiving a 3.9% pay raise in 2009.
How can that be? I mean, they're supposed to be civil servants. They're supposed to work for us. Or was it the Twilight Zone? You know, there was a time when the government workers actually earned less, right? They really were servants. Who's the servant now?
The U.S. national debt is now $12.8 trillion. However, the U.S. government is refusing to include the debts of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac on its balance sheet when these are now government-controlled entities. Including the Fannie-Freddie debt of $6.3 trillion, our real national debt is $19.1 trillion. Once you include our $60 trillion in unfunded liabilities for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, our total federal obligations have now reached $79 trillion, or more than 5.5 times our GDP of $14.2 trillion. It will be impossible for our debts to ever be repaid without the U.S. printing the money and creating hyperinflation.